Hear me out. I'm starting to think Bryce Anderson might be the best DB on this Texas A&M roster in 2023.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in the Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. I think Bryce Anderson could be the best defensive back on this Texas A&M football team, folks. And it's just, a lot of times I'll rewatch tape, right? I'll rewatch tape and kind of change opinions, formulate new ideas on the team, on different things. And I've been high on Anderson. I like Anderson. I thought he was great last year, and he played about 200 snaps. But I just rewatching some different things, knowing how good of a spring he had. I'm sold, folks. I mean, I have him right now as the guy at the nickel position. So then that gives you Tony Grimes at corner, Tariq Chappelle at corner, Damani Richardson at safety, and then Jordan Gilbert at safety. And I think the reason this is an interesting talking point is because I wrote down the names that I think could be relevant players in this Texas A&M secondary, and it's starting to almost. I'll make that joke here in a minute, but I mean, so the names I still have written here: Sam McCall, Josh DeBerry, Jared Kerr, Deuce Harmon, Jacoby Matthews, and then of course the true freshman that came in this 2023 class. So, folks, the reason I think this is kind of funny is just based purely on the fact that I always joke about the defensive line has 432 people that could come in and be dominant. And then you look at this list and be like, wow, pretty much every single name. Let's count this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's about 13 names that could be relevant in this Texas A&M secondary that were pretty much all of them were highly ranked guys. So I think it says a lot to this secondary. But I think Bryce Anderson is going to be a monster. He's got big shoes to fill coming in to play nickel. I think that he's going to do that well. I think he's got all the attributes and the skill sets needed to come in and play that position well. Nickel's an important position. When you're over there, you're helping out on the inside. You have to be able to stop corners and tight end. I mean, you have to be able to stop slot guys, tight ends, whatever the play calls for. But the thing about Bryce Anderson that stood out to me is the fact that he was outstanding run grade-wise on PFF last season. I love that in a cornerback. I love when a cornerback is not afraid to help in the run game. We don't see that a ton. A lot of times you'll see corners that are more hesitant to kind of get in and stop the run. They, that's not why I'm here. I'm here to break up passes, get interceptions, stop the air game. And I love it when a corner or a defensive back, I'm sorry, not a corner, but because with Anderson being a nickel, safety, I love it when a corner or a safety makes an effort to stop the run, because I think it's a big deal, especially in I believe that in all lives of football, but when you're talking about this Texas A&M team, that one of the biggest question marks on the defense is whether or not they can stop the run. I mean, we feel pretty confident in this room. I think we feel confident about the defensive line getting after the quarterback. The question is, can some of these defensive linemen and the linebackers stop the running attack of their opponents? That's going to be the biggest question mark. So if you're one of these guys, Anderson, Grimes, Chappelle, Richardson, or Gilbert, help in the run. If you see that it's a run play, crash, get off your block and help your defensive linemen and linebackers make these plays. So seeing that Bryce Anderson makes it an effort to help stop the run is a big attribute that gets me excited for him. But I mean, it's just, folks, don't forget about the spring buzz surrounding Anderson. I mean, he was one of the best defensive players on the team in spring. He obviously received some accolades from the coaching staff to prove that after spring ball. And I just feel like watching the tape, I think he was a player that I knew he was good, but I didn't think he could be elite. And then I watched the tape again, and it's almost like how good he was for me was kind of swept under the rug because I watched this tape back and I was like, my goodness, if he continued to develop from the spring into the fall and he's ready to rock for this season, I really think Anderson could be our best defensive back. And that's in a defensive back room of Tony Grimes, who I think is going to be a potential day 2 pick in the NFL draft. Tariq Chappelle and Damani Richardson, I think, are two top players on this roster. I mean, we've seen 24/7 Sports made a rankings of their top players in college football. The only Aggie listed was Tariq Chappelle. He was in the 90s. And then Damani Richardson, I've seen some different lists that have him as the best player on this roster. And I really think that Anderson's ceiling is to have a better year than those guys. And the thing about it is, I'm not out here saying that Grimes and Chappelle and Richardson aren't going to have good seasons. I'm just saying if Anderson's upside clicks this year, I think he could be the most dominant defensive back on this roster. So it'll be interesting to see if that prediction kind of comes to fruition. And if it does, though, folks, don't look at it like if we look at the end of the season and we see Anderson was the best defensive back on this team, don't look at it like a negative thing because, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of people, commenting and saying stuff like, oh, I think Grimes and Chappelle and Richardson are all going to have better seasons. Folks, I could definitely see that happening too. I'm kind of making a bold prediction with Bryce Anderson. But I think that if Bryce Anderson finishes the season as the best defensive back on this team, I think it's a good thing. And the reason I say that is because I think we feel pretty good, pretty confident in what we're going to get from Grimes, Chappelle, and Richardson. And Gilbert, frankly, too. I feel pretty good about what those guys are going to bring to the table. So that means that if Anderson is able to kind of outperform them, have a season better than them, I think that means that he's had a monster all-SEC type season because I think you could potentially get an all-SEC season out of one of Grimes, Chappelle, Richardson, and Gilbert. So, I mean, if Anderson is outperforming those guys, you're going to see some postseason accolades. And frankly, I feel very confident that one of these defensive backs is going to make an all-SEC team, potentially multiple. And I think there's a world where that's Bryce Anderson. So I think having a DB room that is as deep as this is going to be crucial for the success of this season. And that's what I joked about. Like I talked about how deep the defensive line is, and I say that a lot, but it's like I feel like I talk about that, and then I look at other position groups. So like we joke about that, and then you look at the tight end room, and you're like, wow, we have like 6 tight ends that can play and be solid SEC starting tight ends. Or I'll look and I'll go like, wow, we have 13 defensive backs that could come in and play these handful of spots we need and play it well. And I think it's starting to become a trend for this roster as a whole for me. I think top to bottom, Texas A&M has a top 5 roster in college football. I think the blue chip ratio proves that. You have one of the best blue chip ratios in college football, even after transfer portal, for those people that say, well, the 2022 class all left, which isn't reality. But for people that make that argument, with transfers, you still have one of the best blue chip ratios in college football. So I think it says a lot about this roster, and it says a lot about the boom/bust nature of this Texas A&M football team. I mean, you have talent everywhere. I joked on yesterday's episode of Locked On Aggies and said something along the lines of my dad used to always joke and say, like, when an Alabama player would go down, he'd be like, well, here comes another 5-star. That's starting to become the reality for Texas A&M, folks. I mean, Anderson goes down, or let's say Tony Grimes goes down. Here comes Sam McCall, a former top 50 recruit. I mean, or here comes Josh DeBerry, a talented player that's been here before at the Power 5 level. This is what I'm talking about with the depth of this Texas A&M football team. And it's not just in this defensive back room. I mean, the only room that I don't feel super confident depth-wise, I really feel like is the linebacker room. And you still got a couple guys that are going to be backups that I think could come in and do the job well, but I just don't think that room's as deep as some of these others. And then you have some of the young guys. So it's like That's the only room that I look at it and I go, I think we need a little depth there. I mean, you're stacked at defensive line, the whole line. You're stacked at defensive back. I think you're stacked at running back. I think you're stacked at receiver. You're stacked at quarterback. And I think you're pretty in good shape on the offensive line. I really feel like the one thing you're kind of missing is that linebacker depth. But I mean, before I get off on a tangent talking about the depth and how good this football team is going to be, in my opinion, like I said, folks, I do think Bryce Anderson could have a season that shocks some people. And I think we all know how good he is and how good he could be. But I really do, after watching the tape, reading into in different things, which gasses you up a little bit. But I can buy into the hype, really, folks. I really can buy into the hype, and I can see a world where Bryce Anderson finishes as the best defensive back on this team. And if he does it, I think it's a good thing because, like I said, you know what you're getting from these other guys. You know you're getting potential all-SEC performances from these other guys. So if you're getting that and then Bryce Anderson one-ups them, goodness gracious, folks, watch out for this Texas A&M defensive back room and watch out for Bryce Anderson. All right, folks. I want to reiterate one more time here and kind of break down this 2024 roster. I was in a Twitter space last night with some Aggie fans chopping it up. And one thing we got to talking about is how special this 2024 season could be based on multiple different factors and why I think Texas A&M could win the SEC and potentially have a college football playoff berth in 2024. We'll talk about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to talk about our friends over at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Folks, LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn. It's a site that I use. Helps me build connections. It helps get jobs. It's helped me get jobs in the past. It's I have a lot of friends who have gotten hooked up with jobs out of college thanks to LinkedIn. It's an all in all great website, folks, that I really like using. I think it's a great thing. It's a great service they have. If you don't have a LinkedIn, go check it out. I mean, it's a great place to find qualified candidates for your hiring needs. I love it. Go check them out over there. LinkedIn is why small businesses this is why people rate LinkedIn as the number one in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors, folks. LinkedIn is the real deal. You got to go check them out. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. So, folks, we talked a little bit about this right when the 2024 schedule was released. When was that? It feels like it was 4 years ago, but I think it was it was a month ago or so. But we talked a little bit about this, but just kind of going over it with some fellow Aggie fans in that Twitter space last night, it made me really kind of want to reiterate this point of how special the 2024 season could be. So, let's run through the schedule again. Notre Dame, McNeese, Bowling Green, Arkansas, New Mexico State, at Auburn, at Florida, at Mississippi State, at South Carolina, LSU, Missouri, and Texas. And that's not in order. That's just the teams that the Aggies are going to be facing. Obviously, so you got McNeese, that's a W. Bowling Green, W. New Mexico State, that's a W. The Notre Dame game, that's going to be an interesting one. You get it at home. You get that game at home, which makes me feel a little more confident. I mean, there's a chance that's college game day in Kyle Field. The crowd's going to be bumping. Fans are going to be wild. People are going to be going crazy. I think it's a game the Aggies could win. And frankly, I mean, there's no real reason to kind of deep dive into that right now, just because we don't really know the outlook of Notre Dame. We don't really know the outlook of Texas A&M, but I'm going to talk about the potential outlook for Texas A&M and why I think this could be a special year. I just think you look at that 2022 recruiting class and all of the talent that was there, right? So we're talking Connor Wigman, we're talking Evan Stewart, we're talking Walter Nolan, we're talking Donovan Green, all of these talented players that were in the 2022 class that played roles last year. This year they're coming into their second year, and then that 2024 season is going to be their third year, where it's like after they're done, they're eligible for the NFL. I just think that is when these players can kind of be fully developed into what they want to do. I mean, let's say Connor Wegman has this solid season where, he has that big step forward, where when we're done with this 2023 season, you look at it, you're like, wow, Wegman had a solid season, good numbers, but he could be a little bit better. He is really close to being a dominant force in college football. Or you could say Evan Stewart, after the end of this season, Evan Stewart's a top 10 receiver in college football. Well, that means with a lot of those receivers leaving for the NFL, next season, Evan Stewart's a top 5, if not the best receiver in college football. And then you have, obviously, that 2024 season, you got Cam Coleman on the way in. You got Draylon Miller. You got some of these talented players in the recruiting class. And, folks, this 2024 recruiting class isn't done. I think we got a lot of talent coming our way this weekend. So it's a season that, if all these players do take that monumental leap that I expect them to have from 22 to 23, and then they're kind of develop into the players that many think they're going to be in 23, what's going to happen from 23 to 24? So you mix that talent kind of being fully developed and or close to fully developed, and then add in this schedule, which I feel pretty dang good about. I mean, LSU, so, Jaden Daniels, I don't think he's going to be sticking around. So it's like they're going to have a new quarterback there. And how's that going to work out? So you get them at home. That's a game I think you can win. I think you beat Missouri. Then you got Texas. Bring back that rivalry. How's that going to go? I don't know. Does Quinn Ewers leave for the NFL? Is it Arch Manning? What's the deal going to look like in that game? It's going to be an interesting one. So that's what I'm saying. You can't really get into these matchups yet because you don't know. But, I'm not a big Florida guy. I think there's a chance we can see Billy Napier gone after this year. I mean, I know he's recruiting well down there, but I don't think they're going to have the results on the field this year. At Auburn, I don't love playing there ever, but is Hugh Freeze going to have that team turned around by then? He might not. I really don't know. South Carolina, I still think they're a few years away. Mississippi State, I'm not too scared about them. Arkansas, a neutral site game. Okay, I feel like the two toughest games on this schedule, you could argue, or the three toughest games on this schedule, Texas, LSU, Notre Dame, you get to play them at home, folks. And I think that is the biggest positive to this 2024 schedule. I mean, I don't love going to Auburn. I don't love going to Florida or Mississippi State or South Carolina, but I don't think those teams are quite there yet. So I'm not too terrified to go play there. And I mean, the Mississippi State, South Carolina atmospheres don't terrify me. I mean, I know you got the sandstorm and the cowbells, but I mean, those don't scare me like playing in Jordan Hare and playing Florida, playing in the swamp. I mean, that scares me more than Mississippi State and South Carolina. So it's an interesting season that I think, I mean, here's the deal. You take care of business in what you should take care of business in. And then let's say you drop the Notre Dame game, but you beat Texas, lose to LSU, finish the year 10-2. And 7-1 in the SEC play, right? Yeah, because you'd have a loss to LSU and a win against Texas. So yeah, 7-1 in the SEC play. I think if you do that, you have a legitimate shot at making a college football playoff appearance, making an SEC championship appearance. I think all that is in play for this 2024 season for Texas A&M, and there's a lot to look forward to. So that's why, folks, it would be awesome if everything clicked this year and Texas A&M won the West, made it to the college football playoff. And I don't think it's crazy to say that's a possibility. It's definitely a possibility, but I don't think it's crazy to say, like I said, that's a possibility. And if that clicks all the way this year, then we can get really excited about 2024. If that clicks halfway this year to where the Aggies go 8-4, win a bowl game, but you kind of look good. It's a good looking 8-4. We talked about that on the Twitter space last night. I think if you do that, and show signs that, wow, we are this close, that 2024 season could be incredibly special. And I'm really looking forward to it, folks. I think this Texas A&M team is 1 year away. And we don't want to keep saying one more year, because I think it could be this year too. But I think if it's not this year and this roster shows signs of being close, that this 2024 season could be one to remember for the Texas A&M Aggies and the amazing fan base that supports this football team. NCAA.com ranked Texas A&M versus Miami as one of the best non-conference games of the 2023 schedule. It's a fun game we talked a little bit about yesterday, but let's talk about why this game means so much coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. Yeah, folks, this Miami Texas A&M game, it's an interesting one. I think that and this is another thing I was talking about with some buddies, with my buddies on that Twitter space last night, is I'm kind of thinking that Texas A&M is going to handle business against Miami. I mean, hearing other people agree with me there kind of made me feel a little more confident about it. I was a little worried that is this a toss up? Could this go either way? I don't love having to go play there in the Miami heat. Now the crowd there at Hard Rock State, I mean, it's not a big atmosphere. It's just more of going to play down there. It's going to be humid. It's going to be hot. It's going to be yucky. I mean, I know obviously you're used to that. These players are playing down in Texas, but I just, this is a game that I think Texas A&M is going to take care of their business. I really do. I mean, I think that Tyler Van Dyke has been a player that I think he's been injured and stuff, but I'm not super impressed. This year maybe this is the year, and he kind of shoves that right back to me. But haven't been impressed with him. I don't think they have the offensive line's good and they have good safeties, but it's just not a roster that really scares me. I mean, Mario Cristobal really underperformed expectations last year, much like this Texas A&M team did. So the question is, like, are they going to rebound this year? I saw a list. It was kind of funny, and it was like the teams set to rebound this season, and there were two of the top three teams. Texas A&M was number 1, and Miami was number 3. Miami might even have been number 2. I don't remember, but I know that they were one of the top teams, with Texas A&M being the top team. So people think Miami is going to rebound, and people think Texas A&M is going to rebound. So if both of these teams rebound, who wins this game? Obviously, it's the second week of the season. It's a real tone setter early on into the season. It's a game where I think if you want to succeed this year, if you want to put up good numbers and have a season that Aggie fans want, you got to win this football game. I don't see a world. I think you have to start the season 4-0 with wins over Miami and Auburn. I think if you do that, the possibilities for an 8, 9, 10 win season really open wide. I think if you drop one of those games to Auburn or Miami, I think you start the year in trouble. I think if you start the season 4-0, this could be a dang good season. I think if you start the season 3-1, I think your chances of doing something special decrease by a significant amount. So this is a big matchup. But once again, folks, it's a game that I do think Texas A&M is going to take care of business. So I want everybody in the comments to let me know, what do you all think about this Texas A&M Miami matchup in Miami? Do the Aggies win? Do the Aggies win by a close ball game? Do the Aggies win by a wide margin? What's the final score there? Do you think Texas A&M leaves Miami and heads back to the great state of Texas with the victory? Everybody let me know that in the YouTube comments. But that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies, folks. I really appreciate you all tuning in. If you are listening wherever you listen, I want you to know that I'm everywhere. Those of you that are YouTube listeners, if you're ever driving to work and couldn't catch the show in the morning or you can't catch it in the evening, listen to me on wherever you get your podcasts. If you listen to me on podcasts and we're ever doing a show that you kind of want to watch on YouTube, come see this handsome mug on the I'm sorry, I couldn't say that with a straight face. That's a lie. But come check me out on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube. Leave me some reviews. All that helps. I really appreciate you all tuning in. I couldn't do it without everybody. This wouldn't be possible without you, the listener, you, the everydayer. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, folks, and we will see you tomorrow.